Let me be controversial for a second. What's the problem with abortion? Killing something that's alive, but if you're not a vegetarian, you're doing that anyway. Huh. So is that the issue? How long have we had abortion technology? Where did it come from? Africa. Where? Yes, that's correct. Where? Huh? Egypt. Because check it out. The same technology that gives us the cesarean section. The Greeks did not invent the cesarean section. They say they didn't invent it. They say Herodotus, the Greek historian, said all the thinkers in Greece learned their stuff from black Africans because the black Africans had the universities, what we call the Egyptian mystery schools today. Okay, where parts of the language, as I had shown you before, are based on body parts. How do you know where to cut a pregnant woman so she won't bleed out so you can deliver the baby? You have to know where to cut, where you're not going to do permanent disfigurement. You have to know that. And that means you have to experiment or whatever it is. The Greeks didn't have that. So we call it the Caesarean section because Julius Caesar was reportedly born that way. But the Romans didn't develop that technology. The Greeks didn't develop that technology, and the Greeks said, we learned it from black Africans, the Egyptians. Abortion technology came from the same body of knowledge. How do you do a first trimester abortion without having mom bleed out? It's the same thing. So that means it's like 5,000 years old, which means it's before Christianity. Which means if the culture doesn't allow alcohol to be sold, hard alcohol to be sold because it will hurt people and because it will hurt the fetus, if they know that, then their worldview about this technology is it doesn't hurt human beings because the soul is unaffected and the soul is the real part of the human being. The body is just clothes worn by the soul. Can I use you as a prop? If I take your hat, you still you. See, you got backup. All right? Come prepared, right. The idea is when the Egyptians created abortion technology and cesarean section and all that kind of stuff, the body is simply the house for the soul. The soul is unaffected by whatever you do. We don't count you until you're born, actually born. Because you can have miscarriages and all that other kind of stuff. That's what modern day demographers, okay, we don't worry about the unborn because lots of stuff can happen before you're born. In fact, many Africans today do not even name their kids until, year 2. Well, no, not year 2, like day 7, day 9, I've seen day 8. Right? They don't even name you because infant mortality has always been an issue. Right? You live past the first week, you probably gonna make it. So we don't even name you until then. All I'm saying is, okay, when I mention abortion technology, what does this have to do with the original position? Whose concept is, if the original technology said this is unaffected, it's an ethical medical procedure. Whose idea is it that, okay, yeah, conception starts at birth, but is the human being a human being if they're not born? Those ideas came later. Now, the reason I bring up abortion is because the largest consumer of abortion services in the United States are white women. They used to do what was called the Mississippi appendectomy. They used to bring women of color and do hysterectomies without telling them that they were doing that, sterilizing them, talking about the 20th century. They used to sterilize alcoholics as part of treatment in the 20th century. So here's what happened. And this is a demographic change. Has to do with the demographic change that's happening, where the United States will be a majority-minority country shortly, within my lifetime. Yeah, maybe even faster. Because what's happening? Who's having the babies? Minorities. Well, white people have always been a minority on the planet anyway. Anyway, right? And so there are some people of a white supremacist bent that say, I'm not talking about Catholics, they got different thing, but when the head of the Ku Klux Klan in Florida says, and I quote, lesbian Jew nurses are killing white babies, therefore any abortion doctor in an abortion clinic is target because they're committing genocide. Lesbian Jew nurses. Really? So, it's Jews that are white baby killers and lesbians that are white baby killers, and it's white babies that you're interested in. So, right to life. I was willing to disbelieve this until I saw these protesters around a Portland abortion clinic. And I was training martial arts with this kung fu school that basically provided an escort service for women just receiving services, not just abortions, but any services. And this mixed race couple, brother was black, obviously brother was black, woman was white, they were going in for abortion. They are protesting white couples going in, but as soon as they see the mixed couple, they part to let them through. Yeah, wow. So it isn't life that you're protecting, it's white life that you're protecting. You think that by stopping white women from having abortions, then you'll have a leg up in the population. No, that's not going to work. Stopping abortion is not going to, but they're desperate to try anything. The reason I bring that up in the context of original position is that everything that I'm talking about was, talked about and reported in the news. And one thing I witnessed. And I didn't understand. So I didn't understand the Ku Klux Klan. Why are you bombing abortion clinics? Because lesbian Jew nurses are killing white.
What are they called now? Because they ain't called the Ku Klux Klan.
Oh, the Klan still exists.
They call them like
they've morphed into other things.
Yeah.
All right. So go back to slide if you would. Crew, thanks. All right. So original position. What is the problem the law is dealing with? And the reason I brought up abortion is because they're trying to stop abortion now. But okay, you want to have babies be born, but you're not willing to have well baby care or prenatal care or fund Head Start. You want the babies born, but you ain't willing to give them the social support to be born and to thrive. What's the sense in that? Okay, so what is the problem the law is dealing with? That's the first part of original position. 2, how does the law address the problem in terms of solution? And 3, what were they thinking to either one? And this is where enantiodromia comes in. Okay, so what is the problem the law is dealing with? How does the law address the problem in terms of solution? What were they thinking? And then there's probably going to be unintended consequences, but that's usually not part of the original position equation. We got a problem, we got to solve it. Here's how the law solves it. Okay? So, is the problem how they were thinking about the problem? Okay, because sometimes it is. So, the word that covers that is enantiodromia. So, here's how that works. That which, it's a Greek word that literally means that which arises from its opposite. Problems generate solutions. So this is the part of enantiodromia. Problems generate solutions. In the original position of the law, we're writing the law to address a particular problem. The problem is, now our solution has generated another problem. So problems generate solutions. So the solution arises out of the problem, that which arises from its opposite. Solutions generate new problems, and the way you see the problem is the problem, and will always generate new problems and be unsolvable until you change your view of the problem. Einstein said this: you cannot solve a problem from the level of consciousness that you generated the problem at. You have to, solution arises at a different level of consciousness. So, the way you see the problem is the problem, and will always generate new problems until you change your view of the problem. Clear? So just so you know, not that I use Wikipedia, but showing you that it's outside of the dictionary. So now Wikipedia even goes to a different level in psychology. Concept introduced by Jung, meaning the superabundance of any force inevitably produces its opposite. It is equivalent to the principle of equilibrium in the natural world, in that any extreme is opposed by the system in order to restore balance. So Jung used the term to refer to the unconscious acting against the wishes of the conscious mind. And gives a citation if you want to read Jung. So, enantiodromia running counter to, referring to the emergence of the unconscious opposite in the course of time. This characteristic phenomenon practically always occurs when an extreme, one-sided tendency dominates conscious life. In time, an equally powerful counterposition is built up, which first inhibits the conscious performance and subsequently breaks through the conscious control. In addiction, we see this as self-sabotaging behavior. You know you want to do good, but you're just in love with the wrong person or the wrong thing. So it keeps tripping you up till you get to the root of the problem, psychologically and emotionally. And he continues on. So the grand plan on which the unconscious life of the psyche is constructed is so inaccessible to our understanding that we can never know what evil may not be necessary in order to produce good by enantiodromia, and what good may very possibly lead to evil. So he's talking about basically fairy tales are basically unconscious expressions. Good leads to evil, evil leads to good. How do you work that? Well, the reason I brought up abortion, okay, look, human life, choice, contraception, how do you raise children, relative power in the society, constructs of racism, constructs of sexism. We're dealing with all of that stuff. When we look at what's happened within the inauguration and the founding of the state of Oregon, since we're talking about that particular time, I'll show you how the state was formed, because it's like that. So the first inauguration of the president, enantiodromia typically experienced in conjunction with symptoms associated with acute neurosis, and foreshadows a rebirth of the personality. So, for example, Obama said in the first inauguration, the problem with government is not whether it's big or small, but whether it works. And he proposed in his first inauguration speech a reconstruction of America. Now, the only problem with reconstruction, because they are also talking about nation building with Iraq, yeah, how great did the American Reconstruction work in terms of the problems that we were experiencing? Not so good, huh? So, 2013. So he kind of makes a reference. I don't know if you were up to watching this, and this is obviously searchable, and you can read the entire text, so I just selected pieces of it. Though blood drawn by lash and blood drawn by sword, through blood drawn by lash and blood drawn by sword, we learned that no union founded on the principles of liberty and equality could survive half slave and half free. We made ourselves anew and vowed to move forward together. To make ourselves, no single person can train all the math and science teachers we'll need to equip our children for the future, or build the roads and networks and research labs that will bring new jobs and businesses to our shores. Now more than ever, we must do these things together as one nation and one people. America's possibilities are limitless, for we possess all the qualities that this world without boundaries demands, like there is no bound. Oh, anyway. Youth and drive, diversity and openness, an endless capacity for risk, and a gift for reinvention. My fellow Americans, we are made for this moment, and we will seize it so long as we seize it together. The brother can turn a phrase, I will give him that. We the people declare today that the most evident of truth, that all of us are created equal, is the star that guides us still. Just as it guided our forebears through Seneca Falls, women's voting, Selma, civil rights, Stonewall, gay rights. Making a statement. Just as it guided all those men and women, sung and unsung, who left footprints along this great mall to hear a preacher say that we cannot walk alone, to hear a king proclaim that our individual freedom is inextricably bound to the freedom of every soul on earth. It is now our generation's task to carry on what those pioneers began, for our journey is not complete until our wives, our mothers, and daughters can earn a living equal to their efforts. Our journey is not complete until our gay brothers and sisters are treated like everyone else under the law. For if we truly create equal, then surely the love we commit to one another must be equal as well. Our journey is not complete until no citizen is forced to wait for hours to exercise the right to vote. Our journey is not complete until we find a better way to welcome the striving, hopeful immigrants who still see America as a land of opportunity, until bright young students and engineers are enlisted in our workforce rather than expelled from our country. Our journey is not complete until all of our children, from the streets of Detroit to the hills of Appalachia to the quiet lanes of Newtown, know that they are cared for and cherished and always safe from harm. That is our great generation's task, to make these words, these rights, these values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness real for every American. Being true to our founding documents does not require us to agree on every contour of life. It does not mean that we will all define liberty in exactly the same way or follow the same precise path to happiness. Progress does not compel us to settle centuries-long debates about the role of government for all time, but it does require us to act in our time. For now, decisions are upon us. We cannot afford delay. Cannot mistake absolutism for principle, or substitute spectacle for politics, or treat name-calling as reasoned debate. We must act knowing that our work will be imperfect. We must act knowing that today's victories will only be partial, and it will be up to those who stand here in 4 years and 40 years and 400 years hence to advance the timeless spirit once conferred to us in a spare Philadelphia hall. All right, when you transfer... All right, this is Merle Evers' invocation. So, jump to the Civil War. The war is over. We won. We's free now. We's American citizens. Free to go where, when, and how how, yeah. So, what was once done to us because of race will be done to you because of the money, whoever you are. The chains come off, they create new and different chains. So, in no case, based on the original position of the Constitution, in no case will white rights be abridged, that is, cut back or reduced in the service of equality, even in the cause of justice. So, after all, for example, Supreme Court, quoting the Constitution, the framers of the Constitution, look, you ain't equal, so we don't have to respect you. So, the election is over. We won, and we won now again, right? We proudly American citizens. Michelle said the last time she was proud again to be an American, caught some flack for that. We're post-racial. So take care in cleaning up the mess that you might not create a more complicated mess because of enantiodromia. You're freed from prison. You have a new and different prison without walls. So let us study the past to see what lingers. Let's take, for example, where we are right now. So, the Oregon Territory. Okay? Now, when we look at, it's not only this institution that we're sitting in, but any institution that's built along the lines of the state, you have to look at the original position that created the state and see how far it goes today. So when we look at, for example, if the state itself was founded on type 4 institutional racism, that is, you can bar American citizens from other states in the United States from coming here legally in your Constitution and be admitted to the Union, then it's legal to discriminate. And if that's what your state has created, then every state institution continues that tradition until you stop it. But just changing the law does not change the attitudes. Okay? But what I want you to do in terms of looking at the analysis is, okay, where did this come from if you've never seen this before? All right, so before you become a state, you had to be a territory and then form the basis for laws. So in the 1840s, two U.S. senators hatched the idea of using the Chinese to civilize the Indians in Oregon. Now, okay, this presumes that the Indians in Oregon were not civilized already. And why would you use the Chinese to civilize the Indians? And what kind of civilization would you do? And by the way, did you ask the Chinese? But this is the kind of thought that was happening in the 1840s, because the concept of manifest destiny, that is, the United States has the God-given right to take over North America. God wants us to take over the West Coast from sea to shining sea. God wants us to do that. That's part of the original position. Because that wasn't happening. 1840s, the war with Mexico had just ended, so now we got all these states that used to be part of Mexico, except for Oregon, which, you know, half of it could go to the British, because the British have a fort at Astoria.
We can thank Andrew Jackson.
Right. Right.
Implementing those policies.
Yeah.
With power.
Yes.
Finance.
Indeed. Power, finance, weaponry, etc. All right, so civilize the Indians in Oregon. But some early white Oregonians weren't too keen on the idea. So there were white people here then that were on the American side. And there were actually some folks, the black folks that were coming here that were free, were also interested in, we need to get more Americans in here so it doesn't fall into British hands. Right? Notice they're both not really caring what the Indians think, but yeah, we're Going to go on. So, because slavery was such a big issue, you basically had to decide which side you were going to be on the slavery question. Right? You're going to be a slave state, you're going to be a free state. Oregon decides, we going to be a free state. Now it's how they decided to be a free state that you should look at. And this is why I preceded this with original position. Okay? So back then, Democrats were pro-slavery, Republicans were anti-slavery. Right? You saw the movie. If you saw the movie Lincoln, right? Lincoln freed the slaves, right? The party of Lincoln. So you had radical Republicans, yeah, let's end slavery and end white supremacy. You had the moderate under Lincoln who, okay, we're going to pass a constitutional amendment. Right? Like that tension, like A.O. Scott's daughter talked about. Yeah, okay, let's see. White guys fight slavery by passing constitutional amendment. Black guys burn down the plantation. But we're going to end that by not having slavery at all in Oregon. So, Samuel Thurston. Okay? Thurston High School, the area of Thurston. That's who that's named for, this guy. So, here's his thing. In 1850, he wrote an address to the Oregon legislature urging the prohibition of free African Americans from the Oregon Territory, which said, all right, because remember, we're going to basically have a free state. No slavery. And in the British colonies, slaves were one race. We inherited that. So the way we end slavery in Oregon, keep black people out. Now, it's not just keeping black people out, it's why they're keeping black people out. And here's what Thurston says. It is a question of life or death to us in Oregon. The Negroes associate with the Indians and intermarry. And if their free ingress is encouraged or allowed, there would a relationship spring up between them and the different tribes, and a mixed race would ensure inimical, that's hostile, to the whites, and the Indians being led on by the Negro, who is better acquainted with the customs, language, and manners of the whites than the Indian, these savages would become much more formidable than they otherwise would, and long bloody wars would be the fruits of the commingling of the races. It is the principle of self-preservation that justifies the action of the Oregon legislature. Okay, so we're banning black people because black people mix with Indians. And the Indians will get better in battle because black people know about white folks' battle tactics. Now, what he's describing, there's an actual historical precedent. Jamaica, Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico. Yeah, blacks got together with Indians and became smarter in battle. Yeah, but that's not going to happen in Oregon because at the time that he's writing this, there's only 200 black people in the state. And only one or two of them are getting together with Indians. And that's actually to essentially rescue wagon trains filled with white people. Talking about Moses Harris as an example. No relation. So clearly race mixing, multicultural, literate, and articulate black people are the problem, and now we have one in the White House. So Thurston's sentiments are still present in a great deal of the American populace, and even in the Oregon populace, who view with suspicion anyone with certain characteristics. So that attitude is basically, this is the Legislative Committee of Oregon as follows. Section 1, no slavery forever in Oregon. So what I've done here is in all caps, basically summarized what's in legalese below it. If there are any slaves, they have 3 years to leave Oregon. If the owners of slaves don't remove them in 3 years, the slaves are freed. Right? So they're covering every contingency. Any free blacks 18 years or older if males have 2 years to leave, female 3 years to leave. Not sure why, but maybe because they don't want to have pregnant women on the trail, but they don't state that. That's the only reason I'm trying. What are they thinking there? Why the difference? But once you reach 18, you have 2 or 3 years to leave. If you don't leave, you should be whipped 20 to 39 lashes.
39.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's possible to survive it. You know, I mean, if you've seen my Lane LCC Facebook page, what I've used as a profile picture is the classic whip slave, the bareback picture. That's why. That's kind of hard. Hello, where are we? If you don't leave after you've been whipped, we're going to be whipping you every 6 months until you do leave. Okay, so again, original position of the law. Why are they thinking this? You know, this is a lot of effort to keep 200 people to get them to leave the state.
How'd that work out?
How'd that work out? Well, so if you are a slave who becomes free, you have 2 or 3 years to leave. So this was passed June 26, 1844. So what this is, the Legislative Committee of the Provisional Government of Oregon, this is passed at Shampooey Park, June 26 of 1844. That's the summer. They had a change of heart. It's Christmas time. An amendatory act to the act passed in June 26, it shall be amended. Repeal sections 6 and 7, the whipping clauses. So, we're not going to whip you anymore. We're not going to whip you anymore, but any black who fails to leave can be arrested and if found guilty be sold to the lowest bidder for service to someone who agrees to remove them from the state within 6 months after that service expires. That person must post a bond of at least $1,000. Okay. Lowest bidder. All right, because we're not doing slavery. Slavery is about the highest bidder. The lowest bidder still has to put up $1,000. Okay? And you're arrested. They put up $1,000, and you are expected to work that $1,000 off. Because you're not a slave, you're a criminal.
So they own your time.
They own your time. Right. Right? It's not slavery. You're a criminal. Right?
In the same way in the movie.
Which movie?
Django.
No, that different state.
Because they sold him to the lowest bidder, but it was they categorized.
Well,
him as
the reason that they sold him to the lowest bidder there, within that, is because he's a runaway. And he's property, so no, we can't kill you, but we'll brand you with an I mean, they could have done a number of things, like, you know, with in Roots, where, you know, Kunta Kinte ran away, they chopped off his toes, right? To hobble him from, and half his foot, I think it was, so that he couldn't run anymore, right? But that's property, right? Because you're still property. So they sold him to the lowest bidder because he's trouble. So you get to be sold off cheap. Different dynamic in Texas or Mississippi or wherever he was. Here, we're banning even free blacks from coming, from being in the state. Now, the interesting thing about this, and Dad tells great stories, and one of the stories that he told was the reason he was encouraged to go into books is because in Mississippi he couldn't pick cotton fast enough, because in order to be considered a competent cotton picker, you had to pick 100 pounds of cotton a day, minimum. So if you know how much a cotton ball weighs, just imagine, it's a bag about 2 of these tables put together, stuffed. Right? So if you can do that in a 12-hour day, because he said there were people that could pick 2 of those. But he wasn't fast enough, so his grandpa said, you need to hit the books, Hawafa. Okay. Yeah. Sweet. But here's what I'm talking about. The prevailing wage at the time is, so basically what you got for picking a 100-pound bag of cotton is 50 cents. This, yeah, I know. No. But this is that same rate. I mean, if you do the math, 50 cents a day for a year. No, this ain't 6 months. This is 3 years to get $1,000 at 50 cents a day. Okay? So there's a certain inner logic, right? So when you think about original position, see how all these things kind of interlock. Like, why $1,000? Why, 2 years to 3 years? What? Yeah, there is something that they're thinking, but they're not necessarily revealing that thought there to us. So, pre-Civil War Oregon thought. So this is written after after Thurston. In arriving, this is this is what I just showed you here was before the Oregon Constitution. And according to the historical record, only one black person was arrested and deported, and he was a business owner in Salem who owned a hotel, a casino, and a stable in Salem. Businessman. And he was arrested and deported, according to the historical record. The only one. Yeah. Yeah, that they kept log on. All right. So, this is before the Constitution, before we became a state, and this eventually became written into the state constitution. So, Salem, Oregon statesman, 1857. In arriving at this conclusion, we are not influenced by hostility to the institution of African slavery per se. We are of the opinion that in the sugar and cotton growing states, it is necessary, if not indispensable, system of labor. We believe also that the African, whatever his nominal condition, is destined to be the servant and subordinate of the superior white race. And it is best for both races that servitude and subordination be regulated by law. And we believe also that the wisdom of man has not yet devised a system in which the Negro is as well off as he is under that of American slavery. Still, we think that our climate, soil, situation, population, etc. render it to any useful extent an impossible institution for Oregon. So essentially what they're saying is because it's cold and rainy and Africans are from hot places, their natural inclination to be lazy is going to be enhanced by the rainy climate. And so you have to understand what they're citing here. This is the thought of the day. Like the emphasis that we put on oil today, back in their day, it was sugar. Sugar was the oil business. Okay, and they were basically having Africans grow sugar in Haiti, the West Indies, in Africa, all over the place, because they thought that sugar was the shit, that it cured all ills. That's why when you talk about sugar pills, they actually thought that sugar healed you. They would actually, grind up some sugar with some gold and blow it in your eye, and it'll cure blindness.
In your eye.
I am not making this up. Okay? So, wow. All right. So either sugar or cotton was, the oil of those days, right? And those are grown in hot places. Africans are from hot places. We can work them real hard, but it's cold and rainy, so they're going to be even more naturally lazy here, so let's keep out slavery. So again, this is an editorial in a newspaper just before they passed the Constitution. Okay? So understand that if it's an editorial in a newspaper, this is going to be the thought of at least the editors intending to influence the populace. Now, of course, and Thurston, right? Let's ban black people because they mix with Indians. He's rationally thinking that. Okay, that seems crazy, but okay. He wouldn't like me.
Just sounds like fear.
It's fear, right? It's not necessarily rational, but okay.
Justifying.
What are they afraid of? Right. Okay. What are they afraid of? So, in early November 1857, the voters of Oregon approved the proposed state constitution by a decisive margin. At the time, slavery was excluded, so we're not going to be a slave state, 727 to 2645, and free Negroes were prohibited from settling in Oregon 8640 to 1081. The pro-slavery vote, compared to the amount of agitation that had emanated from the pro-slavery camp, made the whole affair seem like a tempest in a teapot. The electorate wanted none of the Negro race. Free Negroes were barred from Oregon by an even greater majority than slavery. Okay, so again, the original position, it's not about slavery, but we just don't want free black people here either. Now, that didn't result necessarily in a mass exodus. But, so we talk about, and again, the original position of the law, the Constitution, the basic legal DNA. White foreigners have the same rights as native-born whites in Oregon. That is, so they're encouraging immigration, and you have the same rights as native-born white Americans in Oregon, but of course, black American citizens are not in this, and you'll see where they fall in too. No slavery or servitude unless as punishment for a conviction. No blacks not residing in the state at the time this Constitution can come, reside, or buy property, make contracts, or sue in court. The legislature shall provide for the removal of all blacks from the state and punish those who bring, employ, or harbor them. And this was repealed in 1926.
What are they afraid of?
Yeah. In the written record, they're afraid of mixing with Indians. Most of the Indians had been are on reservations. Actually, Indians were good at rebelling themselves. There was a piece, an affair called the Cockstock Affair. Cockstock was a native who had had a horse sold to him by a black guy. The horse died. He went looking for the black guy to get his money back. Violence ensued. And so that was kind of an impetus. They use that as a story. I mean, that's a story if you studied the history. Right. Okay, the black guy survived. Cockstock was killed, but in unrest among the Indians. There was the Whitman massacre where a group of white missionaries was killed by Indians. Okay, we need to move the Indians off, and these black people. And there was also, around the Cockstock Affair, a plot by a group of Indians to drive white settlers out of Oregon. But somebody tipped off the white settlers, so it didn't happen.
So that black businessman was going to go mix with the Indians and overthrow them?
No, he was a black businessman in Salem, just doing business. There weren't no Indians in Salem, right? Because Grand Run hadn't, well, it might have been established then, but, right. No, it's fear. But remember, original position in the law. What's the problem? The problem is free black people. Well, they encourage it. Well, wait, there ain't no Indians around. How many black people does it take to cause an Indian revolt? Well, let's look at the historical record. You need several hundred, not two, scattered all over the place. Several hundred in one place, like the Maroons of Jamaica or in Mexico. Several hundred or several thousand. 200 scattered over the state.
They're basically anticipating problems.
Right.
Anticipating this and that. And
Right.
Whatever else
anticipating a problem that probably ain't going to happen because the black people that are coming here, like Moses Harris, want to bring in white settlers so that it becomes part of America and not Britain.
We had a MODOK uprising.
Right, right. And that was Captain Jack and his crew. They're doing that on their own. No black involvement at all. So, why are they tripping? It's hard to say. Continuing on from the Constitution, blacks and Asians are not permitted to vote. Now, part of original position, what you want to consider is how the law is written, and it's kind of based on biblical principles, that is, King James Version of the Bible, biblical principles. You do not forbid something that ain't happening. It has to be happening before you forbid it, right? Why would you? I mean, yeah, you can anticipate, but you do not stop something that ain't happening. People have to be doing it, and that's why you pass a law against it, right? So, blacks and Asians not permitted to vote. The Asians here are particularly in China, but the legal language, no Negro, Chinaman, or mulatto shall have the right of suffrage, that is, vote, which meant they were trying to. No Asian can buy property or mining claim or work a mining claim in the state. You pass a law against that because they're doing that. All right. So then, when we look at amendments to the Constitution as of the Civil War, the 13th Amendment, Lincoln's big thing, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or in any place subject to their jurisdiction. This came from the Oregon Constitution. So this led to the observation of some of us doing civil rights work within this state. Everything starts in Oregon. They try stuff out here before they export it to the rest of the country. Like this constitutional amendment, like Oregon Health Plan, like a few other things. So, 13th Amendment doesn't necessarily free slaves, but it basically says slavery or involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. So it's the states that get to define what a crime is. So you could actually be worked for free if you're arrested and convicted of a crime in any state. And we'll see with Reconstruction what some of those crimes were. And the 14th Amendment, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privilege or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. What this means is, born here, you're a citizen. What it means also is that if your parents came here illegally and you're born on U.S. soil, you're a citizen, but they not. Which is interesting in terms of the history of what's happened on this continent. Okay? If you're here to help us build the country, we welcome you as citizens. That is, before there was an America. But, you know, we don't recognize if you're willing to cross a desert or go on a boat or whatever, risk life and limb. And then there's bifurcations of that, too. Why do we talk about feet wet policy? Well, there are 130 million black people in Latin America, all through Latin America. Okay? So when you come here illegally, whether you cross a desert or come here on a boat, you're an illegal immigrant, yes? By definition? So what happens with Haitian boat people? They legal immigrants or illegal immigrants? Come on, that's simple, right? Well, actually, they got deported. They get deported. What happens with Cubans?
If they can make it, they're allowed to make it back.
If they make it, they're allowed to get in, except skin color. If they're light-skinned Cubans, they get to stay. If they're dark-skinned Cuban, they're deported as if they're Haitians. Okay, feet wet policy. You make it to the shore, your feet are wet, right? If you're light-skinned Cuban, you get to stay. Dark-skinned Cuban, sent back. We saw this in the Elian Gonzalez affair. Okay, where Elian's light-skinned. So there were actually 4 people that survived that. Elian was one.
He went back.
Yeah, he was sent back because his father's still alive and the rights of the parent usurped. Yeah, all right. So his mother and he and his sister were getting on this boat to come to America. The engine quit a mile offshore, so they had to drift back to shore, and the dad said, no, you're not taking the baby girl. Sorry. I don't know why he didn't take Elian, but whatever. So they get on another boat. They come here, the boat sinks. Elian's mother, because the only life rafts they have are inner tubes, rubber inner tubes, no life jackets. And they don't have enough for everybody. So Elian's mother puts him in an inner tube. She drowns.
Why don't she just grab him? So why don't she just grab him?
That's what happened. She drowns. The other 2 survivors, besides the daughter, his sister that was left in Cuba, was this woman who was Blanca, so light skin, and her boyfriend, who was, right? So they make it to shore. They're picked up. Because one of her uncles owned an auto shop, he got to stay, because otherwise he would have been deported, because that was the policy. It was written about by John F. Kennedy Jr. in his magazine George, because he said, okay, there's racism within our immigration policy. So why do light-skinned Cubans get to stay and Haitians get sent back and dark-skinned Cubans get to sent back, and that's not written in the law? Okay, why is there a preference being given to light-skinned Cubans and or Russian ballet dancers or okay, what is this? We're making political points, but people want to come here and work. What is this? How about a sane immigration policy or an immigration policy without race? Let's try that. Could we do that? Wow. All right, so 14th Amendment. You born here, you're a citizen. End of story. 15th. Representatives shall be apportioned with the several states according to their numbers, excluding Indians. So basically now black people are whole people. The vote is 21 years of age if you're male, right? And then we basically, the whole number of male citizens. So we've gotten rid of the 3/5 clause. So if you're here, you're a citizen, you vote. Okay? But again, eligibility is decided by the states. So here's what the states do. You have to be able to read and write to vote. So they do literacy tests for college entrance for people who may not have even gone to high school because it's illegal for them to. Or you need to count how many M&Ms are in this jar. Or how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. Guess, I'm not making this up. How many bubbles are in a bar of soap? You guess correctly, you can vote.
0.
All right? So, with original position, the reason I'm saying enantiodromia, okay, yeah, we're free, but there's limits to that freedom. Yeah, Oregon's a great state, like living in a national park, but then I had somebody told me yesterday in my class that, you know, lives in a nearby town, that the first time she had any contact with minorities was coming to Lane Community College, which is a very common experience for a lot of folks in Oregon, right? So I can say in the 15 years that I've been doing this class, this is definitely the most minorities I've had in the class, ever, right? So, hey, there's progress being made. All right, so this will be up in a day or so, and we'll continue on with full schedule next week. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. 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 Hey.